IELTS Speaking Part 3 Rights and Wrongs. Question 1. Do you feel that parents should be punished for their children's crimes? Answer. Well, I don't think it would be fair at all. It's very difficult to keep tabs on your children when you're working hard, and even more difficult to, control teenagers who are a law unto themselves. I don't think all parents are to blame for the behavior of their offspring. Question 2. How do attitudes towards right and wrong vary from one culture to another? Answer. I think attitudes to right and wrong vary in the sense that different cultures tolerate different kinds of behavior. If a certain type of behavior is unacceptable in a particular country, it is considered wrong, whereas it might not be seen as such somewhere else. And it's true that it all comes down to values. The same situation exists between the different generations of one culture. For example, something that was considered inappropriate in our grandparents' time might be quite acceptable nowadays. It's difficult, though, to talk of other cultures as backward because it might work for them. They have a completely different set of morals and standards. And who are we to say that we are better? Question 3. What is the greatest deterrent to people who are considering doing something that they know is wrong? Answer. Well, I suppose it would depend on the person as to what would act as a deterrent. For most people, prison is a deterrent, but not for hardened criminals, for whom prison is a way of life. I suppose the threat of capital punishment might be the only thing that would make someone like that think twice about breaking the law. However, even in countries where capital punishment is carried out, people still commit crimes. So it isn't a deterrent for desperate people or those who are completely out of control. However, for most people, being considered dishonest or untrustworthy is probably enough to put them off doing something wrong. Question 4. How far is society responsible for rising crime rates? Answer. I'd say that society is partly to blame for rising crime rates for several reasons. For one, the materialism and greed that society seems to encourage lead to more shoplifting, burglaries, car thefts, and so on. And the general decline in moral values in society today means that people are not deterred by a sense of right or wrong anymore. And besides, the government is also partly to blame by encouraging commercialism and by not passing and enforcing stricter laws for wrongdoers. I also blame the government for the underfunding the police force so that it doesn't have the manpower to fight crime. Question 5. Do you believe that the punishment should fit the crime? Answer. From my perspective, that's a rather outdated and uncivilized way of punishing people. Having the punishment fit the crime. If we punished perpetrators of violent crimes in this way, then we would be no better than them. And it would mean the reintroduction of the death penalty for people who commit murder. That would be a major backward step, in my opinion. However, I do agree that vandals and people who destroy property should have to pay for the damage they have caused. That's why I think community service is a good idea. It makes people give something back to society. Question 6. Are there any occasions when punishment can have a negative effect? Answer. I think punishment has a negative effect in most cases. It hardly ever works, and I think it only serves to make people feel more angry and resentful. And it can be particularly harmful if someone is punished for something they didn't do, because it can cause that person to lose faith in the system and to become embittered. Question 7. Why are rules and regulations necessary? Answer. Well, obviously rules and regulations are necessary in order to maintain harmony and order in society. If everybody went around doing exactly what they wanted, with no regard for the law, then there would be chaos. This applies to all areas of social life, to school, to the workplace, and public life. Even games and other forms of entertainment rely very heavily on rules. Rules are also there to make life easy and keep things running smoothly. For example, if there were no rules or regulations, then everything would take longer to do and life would be a lot harder. It's something to do with events and processes conforming to our expectations, which simplifies all kinds of procedures. And indeed, it's when rules and regulations are broken that problems are caused, both to the rest of society and eventually to the one who has broken the rule. Question 8. How important is it for people to know the difference between right and wrong? Answer. Well, it's important for all of us that people know the difference from right and wrong, because if they don't, then sooner or later, we're all going to be living in fear of one another. And I don't think it's that difficult either. I mean, it's common sense. And I wouldn't believe most people who claimed that they didn't know that what they were doing was wrong. It's not exactly innate, but you very quickly develop an understanding of how your actions might affect others. Then it then becomes second nature. If people lose the ability to tell right from wrong, then civilization will ultimately collapse and the human race will degenerate into barbarism. But I also think it's going a bit too far to say that people always know the difference. And there are some gray areas, and people might try to do what's right but end up doing the wrong thing. I don't think they can be blamed for that, as long as they had good intentions. But, it is very important to know the difference. I think we should always remember that one person's freedom ends where the next person's begins. Then we can't go far wrong. Question 9. What are the main reasons why we punish people for their wrongdoings? Answer. The purpose of punishment should be to deter people from doing wrong and to teach them a lesson if they do. I think there's a great danger of punishment being used to get revenge, especially in high-profile cases where the media have got involved. It's very easy for the press to manipulate the public and make a scapegoat of someone. We should assess each case on its own merits and make sure that prisons are used primarily for people who present a danger to the public. So I think it would be better to say punishment should teach people that there are consequences to their actions and that they can't get away with hurting other people. It's important for the proper functioning of society, and this doesn't only apply to the criminal justice system, but also to how parents bring up their children and to the discipline system in schools. So punishment inevitably tends to form part of our education. Question 10. Can you think of any occasions where you might be justified in taking the law into your own hands? Answer. From my vantage point, there are no circumstances under which taking the law into our own hands is justified. That kind of behavior makes you as bad as a criminal, and if everybody behaved in that way, then it would only lead to anarchy. I realize that in many societies it is a fact of life, but the consequences always seem appalling, like family vendettas going on for decades and public lynching, for example. That's horrible. So I totally disagree with the statement.